One day after the Pacers' maybe best win of the season, another crummy loss. It's so hard to figure out this team, and it was again on Monday. What went wrong against the Raptors, the defense, Haliburton's crummy night, and much more, all coming on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, y'all, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, again, another oof from the Pacers, who can beat anybody and lose to anybody, as they've shown all season. Sunday night, Mavs in town, winners of 7 straight, one of the better teams in the NBA in the month of February. Pacers, no problem, dispatched them one of their most complete wins of the season by 20-plus points. The following night, the Raptors in town, 12th in the East, they enter the day, and they beat the Pacers. And this same Raptors team, the Pacers beat, while banged up, on the road on Valentine's Day tonight. They had a lead in the fourth by 1. They were ahead by 1 in the second and first quarters. They had some edges, but in general, they looked like the inferior team for almost the entire game, and that's what made it such a weird one. Before we get into lots of details, Ben Mathurin, career game, Siakam, excellent. That stuff doesn't matter. The flow of this game, it leads into another topic I want to get to, which was the Pacers' defense in this game, was really telling of the Pacers' struggles, because I just described what it felt like kind of watching, right? Even with the Pacers getting these occasional leads, you could look at the game chart, the NBA.com game flow chart of, when the Pacers were ahead and by how much. And you can see the Pacers first quarter, they were looking good. And then they were ahead by like 2-1 in the second quarter. Didn't lead until the fourth. They were ahead by 1 3 times in the fourth, but also were down by double digits in the fourth, to see that they never had any sort of grip on this game. Their biggest lead was 5, and in a game with 21 lead changes, the Raptors led for primarily the entire game, because they looked like the better team significantly. Why is that? Why did the Raptors look so good? Because the Pacers defense had none consistency in this game. And that's not a new thing for the Pacers, but that's not nothing. And I'll explain why in more detail later. But specifically to this game, 78 points in the paint for the Toronto Raptors. 78, just absolutely killer. Everybody got to the rim. Emmanuel quickly, Gary Trent, 2 guys who are known for threes. They took 13 threes. They took 15 non-threes. Jakob Poeltl lived inside. Scotty Barnes lived inside. RJ Barrett took 13 twos. You get the gist from the Raptors starting 5. Raptors took 28 threes this game out of 96 shots. That's a fine ratio. That's not a low three-point attempt rate. I'm not saying that to say that that's atypical for them. They're not a high-volume three-point attempt team normally. They only attempt 33 per game, but they took less than that this game while getting to the rim like crazy, because the Pacers' defense was awful. And when their defense is that bad, which it has been a lot this season, although not, again, we'll talk about why the defensive conversation right now is more than just this game. But that was what lost them this game, is even when they were humming offensively, right? Early in the game, their offense looked pretty good. Pascal, Siakam started the game off strong. Myles Turner was scoring early. They were ahead by 5 in the first quarter. Even early in the fourth quarter, when they mounted a comeback, Ben Mathurin, big threes. Jalen Smith late in the third quarter, big 3. Ben Shepherd hit a shot. I can't remember the other one. There was another big shot. But, all together, the Pacers get the lead back. Their offense is rolling, but they kept that lead for no time, basically. They were ahead 101. They were ahead 101-100, with about 8 minutes to go in the game. And I thought, maybe they can win this. Ben Mathurin hit a free throw with 8:57 to go to make it that score. Before the 6-minute mark even hit, the Raptors were up 11, right? Like, it was just so fast that they went on this run. Grady Dick 3, RJ Barrett layup, Emmanuel quickly 3, RJ Barrett floater, and a Grady Dick 3 in that stretch. They just went on a tear. Ochai Agbaji hit 2 free throws. They scored every possession. Every single possession outside of an RJ Barrett missed free throw, they scored for that 2-minute stretch. Like, that's what this game was for the Pacers. Every time they had something going, their offense was good enough. 122 should have been enough in this game. Every time their offense was good enough, they couldn't get the stops to get it done. And it was just inconsistent because they did have some flashes. And the box score actually, in general, tells the story of this game because the Pacers, 10 turnovers. That's good. That's fewer than the Raptors at 11. Rebounding battle, 43-45. Pretty close. Pacers had more offensive rebounds. They should have had more possessions. Pacers took 4 more shots and took more free throws. Lots of numbers say Pacers should have been in this game, but they defended the rim so poorly that despite all that, the Raptors shot 9.2% better from the field and made 7 more shots than the Pacers, and they were way more efficient from 3. They're not an awful shooting team, but not very good, 24th in three-point percentage, yet they were way better from deep in this game because drive, kick, wide open. And that was the game, the inconsistent defense for the Pacers. And Grady Dick, 4 for 4. Kelly Olynyk hits half his threes. Ochai Agbaji hits half his threes. Quickly was rolling. Everybody except for Gary Trent was rolling from 3 for the Raptors. That says everything about the Pacers' inability to keep the Raptors out of the paint, to get some stops and get it done. And they get another inexcusable loss. They should be beating the Raptors. They should be winning at home. They had a chance to be in 5th place in the East. Had they won, they'd have been tied with the Sixers in the standings and owned the tiebreaker. They'd have been in 5th. Instead, they lose. The Heat pull off an incredible win with like half their team out in Sacramento, and now they're in 7th. Like, that's what nights like this can do. And sure, they stole one last night against the Mavericks, and so they're in a better spot if they hadn't done that, obviously. But and again, like I said in this race, every upset win is critical in this race because all these games matter a great deal. Well, every time you get upset, if you're the Pacers, the same flip side happens. So I want to start with defense. Then we'll talk about Haliburton and a couple other things that went wrong in the next segment. I want to talk about defense, and I'm going to write about defense. 130 to Toronto. It's not like they scored more than 130 against Toronto earlier this season. That's bad. Obviously, that's terrible. But they could have still won, but they should have not needed to score over 130 to beat this Raptors team that has a skippy offense. It's quick, right? They get shots up quickly in the half court. They try to play in transition. Their pace isn't insanely high. It's not like they're trying to get into early offense all the time, but they're a fast-paced team, above average this season. The thing that stands out to me about the Pacers defense to this point in the season, right? I didn't even know this. I knew this, I guess, but I didn't know this. So if you just start from, the trade deadline happens, Pacers trade away Buddy Hield. They have that game where they're, traded stuff away. And Steph Curry goes bananas. They lose 109-131 at home to Golden State on the 8th. Since then, they gave up 111 to the Knicks, 111 to the Hornets, 125 to Toronto, 115 to Detroit, and then 111 to Dallas. So outside of the game in Toronto, fittingly, where they gave up 125, they've been holding teams under 120 and defending kind of well. And New York and Detroit, New York was banged up, but Charlotte, New York, Detroit, Dallas, there's some good offenses in there. Dallas's offense is great, especially, right? That should have been a successful stretch. And so I realized they're playing well, they're winning games, but I didn't realize this until I looked it up today after this game. Entering Monday before that Raptors game, the Pacers were 8th in defense over their last 5 games. They didn't feel like it, but they were, right? That's big for them. They were 14th in defense right now over their last 6 games. So they dropped 6 spots from their defense against the Raptors. The Raptors passed a lot. They attacked the rim, right? That style's been tough for the Pacers all year. They've given up a ton of points to the Raptors in all 3 meetings, but that was just terrible. And obviously, playing bad defense, you're going to lose more. That part of this is not rocket science. It's the inconsistency from game to game, right? To have such a good defensive night against a very good Mavs team that's rolling, to then follow that up with this, is what is so jarring. This isn't new info. The Pacers have been inconsistent on defense all year, but usually their best stretches and worst stretches are marked by their defensive level because they score so much. That identity is going to stick with them always. The only time their offense was leading to losses was when Tyrese Haliburton was out, right? When they scored 105 in New York and they weren't scoring very much, or when they had 115 at Portland, 110 at Phoenix, and 109 against Denver at home. Siakam was just getting traded. Haliburton was out for 2 of those games, and they lose twice, 3 in a row. That was the only time all season their offense, to me, was their critical concern in a losing streak, right? All the rest of the times they've been losing a lot. Remember, early / mid-December, right before they made their starting lineup change. Here's 4 in a row. At Milwaukee, they give up 140. At Washington, 137. At Minnesota, 127. Versus the Clippers, 151. Brutal. They changed their starting lineup and made big defensive changes. Not big, but they made significant defensive changes at practice right after that stretch, right? That killed them. Their worst stretch was marked by their worst defense in an already bad defensive season, right? That time right after, they got Haliburton back late January, 129 to Boston, 133 to the Kings, 129 to the Rockets, 131 to the Warriors. Bad defensive stretch, and they didn't get the results they wanted, losing 4 out of 6. This is not new information. I'm just sharing that side of the story. Whereas the other side of the story is some of their best stretches of the season have been their best defensive moments. Their only winning streak they had 2 winning streaks, over 3 this season. One was those 2 games added for the in-season tournament, but it was at Miami and then Boston at home, at Milwaukee, which was at, AKA, in Vegas, and then at Detroit coming out of Vegas. And that was 129, 112, 119, 123. That wasn't great, but good enough defensively. They had that early stretch of the season where they won 4 out of 5. They gave up 116, 111, 118, and 124 in those 4 wins. In their winning streak that was scheduled every game. So this was right after they changed their starting lineup. So from in Houston to playing the Hawks, right before they finally lost that streak to the Celtics. And they even did it well in that game too. 117 to Houston, 104 to the Bulls, 126 to the Knicks, a blemish, 116 against the Bucks, 116 against the Hawks, 118 when they finally lost to the Celtics. Their best levels are when their defense, this is not new information, but in terms of consistency, racking up wins in a row. Had they won 4 in a row by beating the Raptors tonight, it would be because they defended well enough for a 4th game in a row. They defended well against Dallas. They defended well enough against the Pistons, and they defended well enough going into the break. They did not defend well enough tonight. And this is, again, I'm not saying anything new. This is more about the consistency and what it meant for this specific game. And their defense torpedoed, and it couldn't do that. They need to get the consistency back. For whatever reason, it was not there in this game. The fight wasn't enough. The effort wasn't enough. They couldn't keep the Raptors out of the paint. And that's a loss, number 26 for the Pacers this season, who will hope to regain that result when they play the Pelicans twice to close out this week. We'll talk about those games as the week progresses. We are going to transition to talking about other stuff that went wrong for the Pacers in this game. They're shooting their star guard. Where did he go? Lots of other stuff to get to on the other side of this break. But first, you the kind of driver that just likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the corner? Well, our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class-exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are all built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen informant system, and the 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-sized crossover for your next adventure. That is an infotainment center, now that I can actually read. They also have the 2024 Nissan Armada, which changes what you should expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Nissan Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next adventure. Shop at nissanusa.com. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Pistons. Kuka Hill should be going nuts. The Pistons got screwed. They were winning. They had the ball. The shot clock was off. Oscar Thompson gets fouled. Huge news for the Pistons. They might win in MSG. Just kidding. No call. The refs admitted right after the game they got it wrong. Knicks score. Knicks win. Brutal. Monty Williams goes crazy in the postgame presser. That should be a fine. He earned it. They got screwed. Kuka Hill for Locked On Pistons on the one side of that, Locked On Knicks for the other. Lots to come from that, I'm certain, when the refs immediately admit a mistake. Let's talk about some other stuff that went wrong for the Pacers in this game. I'm sure everybody loves hearing about things that went wrong, but hey, the Pacers do not deserve other topics today. Tyrese Haliburton, wherefore art thou, as they said in olden times. 9 points for Mr. Haliburton in this game, 7 assists. A night after he was very impactful with his defense. He had 2 steals in this one. He had 4 the night before. His shot escaped him. 1 for 6 from 3. He missed 2 free throws on the same trip to the line, although he was 4 for 6 in general. 2 for 11 from the field. So that means he was 1 for 5 on twos. Man, did the Raptors fluster him. They're a bigger team. They have size, but usually he gets the ball out and other guys have nice nights. That wasn't the case for the Pacers. These are related stats, but a lot of the game, the Pacers were struggling from deep. In fact, they finished the game 13 of 42, which is 31%. Ben Mathurin's pull-up saved them from an atrocious night defensively. But the story of how their offense really slowed down, including the shooting, was kind of stemming out from Haliburton, who could not, for the life of him, get going in this game. He hit 1-3 in the fourth quarter. That kind of made him look like he was coming alive, but it was never really there. 9 points, his 4th lowest of the season. The other 3 games were the Clippers game in mid-December, which was amid the stretch I was talking about, among the Pacers' worst of the season. He played awful that night, minus 37. The Boston game where he got injured, he had 7 points. And the Golden State game on the trade deadline day when he was just coming out of a minutes restriction and they got thumped, right? So the only other times this has happened is when he had limited minutes and the Clippers game. This is among his worst scoring games of the season. 7 assists is tied for his 7th fewest of the season. You get the gist. Collectively, brutal game from Tyrese Haliburton. And I thought the Raptors pressured him well. They do a good job of pressuring the play finishing guard, whoever it is. Like they were getting out on Ben Mathurin shots pretty well. They made life hard on Andrew Nembhard at times. They're good at that. Credit to their whole team for that sort of setup. But Haliburton in particular just could not get going in that system with that structure, with the way the Raptors were defending him. And unlike other games where he can get it out, get it moving, or still be an engine or still be a threat, as you know, guys have to chase him around, that didn't happen in this game. And of course, when your offensive engine is bogged down, that's going to hurt you. But they still scored 122. Mathurin was unbelievable. We'll talk about him in the third segment for sure. And Pascal Siakam. They were both phenomenal. Phenomenal. They should have been the lead of this show. And all the Pacers needed was Haliburton to be okay, right? 15-9 is probably enough for the Pacers to win this game from Haliburton, but they didn't even get that. He had a really off night, and the Raptors deserve some credit for that, but not enough. Haliburton certainly doesn't feel good about how he played. We didn't get to talk to him after the game. It was among his worst performances of the season. He could not get going, and it cost the Pacers big time. He was not the only Pacer who struggled. The whole starting 5 had massive negative plus minuses. Turner had 16 and 11, though. Pascal had 27, 9, and 6. 34, 9, and 5 for Mathurin. Again, those two will get some focuses in the final segment. Nembhard, fresh off of a brilliant 7 for 8 game where he hit his only 3. In this one, 2 turnovers, only 1 assist, 5 for 14, minus 11. He also did not play as well as he did in the previous game. The guards in general needed to be better for the Pacers. I have a note from this game. I need to start timestamping these that just says guards, ? They were not playing well enough at all. And those two in particular, who not only are good scorers and shooters, but good setup men for others, they couldn't set up guys for the threes, right? And that was really, they also lost Doug McDermott to a calf injury. Like a lot went wrong shooting for the Pacers in this game. And so when Haliburton can't get going, and the rest of your team that sometimes can shoot, Obi Toppin's been shooting well this year. He was 0 for 5. Ben Shepherd just made all of them in one game. He was 0 for 3. Doug McDermott 0 for 2. You get the gist. That all stacking together is very tough for the Pacers. You know, it wasn't perfect other places, right? Ben Mathurin said after the game he thought he was, quote, really bad, unquote, on defense. His words. I still would have put him at below average, certainly defensively in this game. Maybe not quite to really bad, but pretty bad. He thought he was really bad defensively. A lot of Pacers players thought they were bad on defense in this game. You know, they had trouble with Jakob Poeltl, mostly because this is as it is for the Pacers. The guy guarding the perimeter gets beat. Myles Turner has to slide over. Now someone else is supposed to come down and cover Poeltl, but it's too late or it's way too difficult. And all of a sudden he gets an easy basket, and it's all because of the perimeter breakdown. And it just happened over and over. Like that was brutal for them all game. And their bench was fine enough. Like their bench was all significant pluses in this game. Again, that 5-man unit is good enough, but they didn't have enough consistent offensive pressure to really be thrilling. You know, I think their top 4 shooters in Shepherd, Smith, Toppin, and McConnell finished something like just 14 for 27, 13 for 27, which is good, but not quite enough. And they didn't rely on those lineups as often, and they had less depth without McDermott out there. And I just did some terrible math because that group was 12 for 27. So that is a little closer to what reality is. Below 50%, not enough from the Pacers bench, not enough from Tyrese Haliburton, not enough shooting from the Pacers, and yet they still had a good enough offensive night because of their two stars. They just needed someone else to be okay. Turner was probably good enough, but I think they needed Tyrese Haliburton or Andrew Nembhard to be okay, and neither of them were good enough in this game, despite the bench being fine, despite two guys being at an elite level, despite the Raptors not being so consistently threatening all night defensively. The Pacers couldn't get it going. And Haliburton, of course, is the face of that. He on his off nights, the Pacers tend to lose. In his lowest scoring games, in his 7 lowest scoring games, they've won twice. One was the Boston game he got hurt, and one was the Atlanta game where he was right before he got hurt, when they just completely smoked him and he didn't have to play that much in the game. He played 25 minutes and had 18 assists. But usually when he doesn't score that much, the Pacers struggle offensively because other teams can defend the Pacers differently when he's off, and he starts to think about passing differently when he's off, and that's usually smart, but can really have lots of ripple effects. So the Pacers lose a game. They could have won. Their defense stunk. Haliburton wasn't good enough. They've got to be better when they play the Pelicans on Wednesday. It wasn't all crummy, though. Man, was Ben Mathurin good on offense. Siakam was good on offense and better defensively a little bit to me. What went into that? Is that something that can be sustainable? And a note about this starting 5 that we're seeing for the Pacers with Mathurin in it, all coming to close out today's show. But first, this next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we only need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week. I cannot stand constant whining about officiating from fans. I think officiating is very fair in pro sports. I think it all balances out in terms of bad and calls for or against teams over the years, maybe not over the course of one season. And outside of extremely egregious examples, very rarely is it worth the effort for people. But I understand fandom, and there's a lot that goes into that. And that's a silly minor thing in my life. But therapy can be different for everyone, and most of us have much bigger problems than refereeing or their favorite sports team. And it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. And that's where therapy can help. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. And we are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, of course, check out Locked On Raptors. Hear what Sean Woodley has to say about the flip side of this game. The Raptors getting a win, their 3rd in a row. There's a lot of jokes about the Raptors pizza party because Darko Rakovic, their coach, joked that a pizza dinner or pizza party could be coming if the Raptors won 3 in a row, and they have. Maybe they'll make the plan. Trae Young's out for a long time. Raptors have won 3 straight. Just maybe. I'm not saying I would pick that, but it's possible. Either way. Last thing I want to talk about on the negative side of this game before we get to talk about 2 guys who are fantastic. Now, with this game, entering this game, the starting lineup the Pacers used with Nesmith out, with Mathurin at the 3, had 57 minutes of action and was -8. That, again, is Mathurin, Haliburton, Nembhard, Siakam, and Turner. That's okay. Certainly not what you want. And again, that's not the lineup they would like. But I was actually surprised it was negative after how well they played earlier this week. Tonight, that group played 21 minutes and 37 seconds, and they were -9. So that group is now -17 in about 80 minutes of play. Maybe they need to change that up if Nesmith's going to remain out going forward. I don't know exactly what change to make. And this is a specifically bad time to talk about this because Mathurin just had his best game as a part of that lineup. But I just think you need someone who's just trying to shoot as your 3-man with that group because Nembhard's handling the ball, Haliburton's handling the ball, and Siakam's handling the ball. Now, Mathurin was, again, fantastic in this game. It has nothing to do with how he played, why I think you might consider a change here. But maybe it's Nembhard, too, that you take out of the group. But maybe Shepherd or even McDermott would be somebody more naturally suited to be a part of that group. If Shepherd can defend at the level he has, might seem strange, but if Nesmith's out, starting him and having his defensive activity in the starting 5, I think might be better for Mathurin's level and better for everyone on the whole in terms of a fit, in terms of effectiveness. But that is little to do with what I want to talk about next, which is Ben Mathurin's fan-freaking-tastic game. Holy smokes, was he good in this one. Not the reason the Pacers lost. Ben Mathurin going 11 for 15, 5 for 8 from 3, 7 for 9 from the foul line, 9 boards, 5 assists, 2 steals, and a block on his way to a tied for career high 34 points to pair with 9 boards, 5 assists, and 2 steals. I'm almost a little bummed from a writing perspective the Pacers didn't win, because now I can't write about Ben Mathurin's last 2 games, where last game he defends Luka, he passes, he rebounds, he even defends Kyrie a few times, and then he follows it up with this game when he has the Ben Mathurin scoring flashes and still does that stuff, which would have been potentially his best, like, growing in a team concept consecutive performances of his career. Brilliant game he played in this game. The scoring obviously was what it was. He did well to score around the rim, right? On twos specifically, he was 6 for 7. That's great. And of course, 9 free throw attempts is fantastic. He was over half of the way to the Raptors' full team free throw attempts. He was awesome on offense. But the 5 for 8 threes were huge. I asked him about working on his pull-up threes after the game, and it's something he's worked on for forever as a move. You could see the Raptors knew he was going to go to it. I mentioned this earlier, but a couple of his pull-up threes were later in the shot clock, and they would send 2 guys to contest it, and he still drilled them. 5 for 8 from deep in this game, and oftentimes it was the only thing that worked for the Pacers offensively at all was Ben Mathurin scoring, or Ben Mathurin hitting a tough 3 late in the clock, or something like that. When they made their valiant comeback to make it a reasonable game that they could win in the fourth, Ben Mathurin and Jalen Smith, who played well again, by the way, after a tough night or last night. Ben Mathurin was awesome. He was making shots and guiding them back in that run. He was unbelievably good in this game. And it's not even like it's something the Raptors did that allowed him to be good. They were defending him hard, but he still found space to pass, and he still found ways to wiggle free for his pull-up threes. And per his own admission, his defense was really bad and needed to be better. But I thought offensively, he more than made up for it with the way he was able to score, contribute passing, just taking care of the ball at a good enough level, hitting the glass, and doing the Ben Mathurin stuff that I thought was so important last year, getting to the foul line for 9 free throw attempts. Really awesome Bennedict Mathurin game, and hopefully it can be a confidence booster for him going forward. Pascal Siakam, also very good against his former team. 27 points. It took him 22 shots to get there, but he had 3 threes, 2 above the break threes too, which is very atypical for his style. 9 boards, 3 of them were offensive. He's very good at getting his own offensive rebound. I think that's a very interesting Pascal Siakam skill. 6 assists, which was the second most on the Pacers, but was almost the most. It was almost his first day as the Pacers lead setup man. They got smoked in his minutes. They lost Mathurin's minutes too. Not their fault. Not either their fault. Siakam was awesome. His sort of arrhythmic breakup of the Pacers style really works against this Raptors team. We can rise up over guys or get to the rim or just do something that puts some juice into the Pacers offense, put some juice into the ball and the scoring. Those two in particular combining for 61 points, 18 rebounds, and 11 assists. That should be almost a guaranteed win for the Pacers, right? Those are supposed to be guys 2 and maybe 3, maybe 4 in terms of the pecking order of the starting lineup, and they're both going to play with the bench some. I've enjoyed some Pascal Siakam plus the bench groups. That was, on occasion. But they didn't get enough from anybody else in the starting 5. And that's why those two having those incredible games where they were also a combined 22 for 37. They were making threes. They were the only 2 guys to make more than 2 threes. Like, they were awesome. They were just fantastic offensively. The Pacers lose this game by nearly 30. If either of them are not this good, they were huge. Turner's double-double was nice, 16 and 11. I thought he actually played a pretty good game despite a couple moments of weakness on the glass there. And I thought TJ McConnell also played a pretty good game again. 10 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, no turnovers. He was a plus 10. He was still hitting those fall-away shots in the lane. Jalen Smith, like I said earlier, his best game since returning to injury. There were some good games for the Pacers. They just needed one more guy, and particularly a guy with the ball out like Tyrese Haliburton. But if it was Nembhard, that would have worked too. One more guy to be good enough, and they would have won this game, and they'd have won 4 in a row for the 3rd time this season, and they'd be 5th in the East. And instead, they're backtracking back to 7th. They have 2 tough games coming up with New Orleans in a row, and a hungry New Orleans team who just had a very emotional game. It's going to be tough. They've got to find a way to recover from this one. They've got to find a way to play better in coming games because this one's going to stink. They have now guaranteed to not win the season series against the Toronto Raptors. They have some light at the end of the tunnel coming up. They have New Orleans. If they can split those, they play San Antonio on Sunday, March 3rd. Then their last tough stretch of the season comes for the next 4 games before finally it gets a little easier. And I keep saying that and then reminding myself, oh, yeah, they just lost to the Raptors and they lost the Hornets the week before that. And I could go on and on. But in terms of the morale of the team and how they're feeling about their seeding, that all does matter. We'll see if it does matter in reality, though, as the games progress. Wednesday, they play the Pelicans. We'll be breaking all that down that night. And, of course, Friday, they play the same team as well. Perhaps you'll hear from a Pelicans person this week here. And we'll have a lot to talk about with the buyout market, the state of the Pacers, all sorts of stuff coming here this week on the Locked On Pacers podcast. Thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed today's show talking Pacers Raptors, despite the result being not what most of you listening would have preferred to see. Back tomorrow talking more Pacers. Till then, everybody, have a wonderful day.